Hello, this is Lindsay and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be working on 5 Milky Way tumblers for my nieces. If you'd like to see how we created these tumblers, please keep watching. So we will be starting off with 5 24-ounce plums from the Tipsy Magnolia, formerly Steel Magnolia. I'm going to prep them like I normally do, just sanding them down with this 80 grit sanding block, and I'm going to take them over to the sink and rinse them off with soap and water. So this is the spray paint that we will be using on all 5 tumblers today. I tried to match them according to their personalities, and they are very bright and bubbly. This is a combination of Color Shot and Rust-Oleum, which Color Shot seems to be my new favorite. It dries quickly and you only require 1 coat. After the cups have dried, I normally move into the epoxy method to apply my glitters. This is just my favorite method. And the way I spray paint my cups is I normally spray them so that I will have a guide when I'm applying my glitter. This just helps me keep everything lined up and I'm applying glitter in the places that it should go. So I normally start off with my chunkiest versions or my darkest versions first. This is Razzle Dazzle in the chunky version, and I'm just focusing on that lime green section that we spray painted. I'm going to go pretty heavy in the center because we will use the 0.015 cut of Razzle Dazzle to kind of get our blend established and fan out that green chunky section. Now I will be going in with Lemon Head. This is a fine iridescent yellow, and again I am very lightly sprinkling exactly where I spray painted my cup yellow. It's kind of a glitter by color or glitter by numbers type of situation. Typically how I do this is I normally go kind of heavy in the center of the color that I have laid down, and then I hold my glitter way up high and angle my cup, and I just sprinkle very lightly. Like my glitter is way almost up above my head at this point, and I'm just sprinkling very lightly on the edge of the color, and this also helps create our blend. Now I will be going in on this very light green section with Blimey. This is a chunky mix. It's a light pastel green color from Peachy Olive, and we will just sprinkle that in lightly. I'm still focusing on the very center, and then I will sprinkle up high on the edges of that color just to give us another blend. Since I want my yellow to kind of stand out a little bit, this is another fine cut yellow that we offer, and I'm just going right on the edge of Blimey and right in between the Razzle Dazzle just to kind of give us some more definition with the yellow. Now I'm going in with Razzle Dazzle. This is the fine version of Razzle Dazzle, and I'm still very lightly sprinkling. I'm right along the edge of where the chunky Razzle Dazzle stops, and I'm just still lightly covering, trying to establish exactly where we want our glitters to go, because you can always add more, you just cannot take away. So at this stage I'm still very lightly sprinkling glitter, trying to angle my cup to get it to fall exactly where I need it to fall, and I'm hoping that this yellow and greens blends well. Typically it does, but you know, I will mess some stuff up. But we are just still lightly sprinkling and using our paint or our glitter by color. And since I am a slow sprinkler, this is why I normally use regular setting epoxy for this process. So now that we have our rough draft or map out of the glitters established, I'm going in with one of the If You Will glitters. This is an ultra fine glitter, 0.008. Now I'm starting to lay the glitter on a little bit heavier, still, you know, trying to establish a blend, but now we are going in a little bit heavier with this glitter. And even if you get glitter in the wrong spot, with Milky Ways, it's always an easy fix. You can correct that pretty easily with a Milky Way. So if you do, no worries, just keep going. This is another lime green that I am throwing in the mix. If y'all know me, y'all know that I have a ton of glitter that has not been released nor named. This is another no-name glitter. It is a very pretty lime green, neon green glitter with little baby stars in it. And we are just adding this to the mix as well. I'm just going right along the lines of the lime green with the Razzle Dazzle, but this is no name glitter again. So if y'all want to name it, just drop me some comments in the comment section. So we will finish adding this, give our cup a good look over and tap off the excess. And this is what we have so far. At this stage is when I really start to lay on the glitters pretty heavy. I'm going back in with Razzle Dazzle and we are literally pouring it on. We're trying to make sure that we have a good blend going. I'm just sprinkling this all over my lime green sections and aiming it towards the yellow to get it to mix well. I'm going back in with this, I don't even remember the name, but I will list it down in the description box. It's a If You Will glitter, and we are going in heavy. We are still aiming and having our cup tilted from side to side. I'm going back in with Sunny Days, trying to make sure that my yellow stands out pretty well, and we are laying it on pretty thick right now. Once we're done adding on all of our glitters, I'm going to take it and tap off the excess, roll it in parchment paper, and then I'll just speed through the next couple of cups so that you can see exactly what we did. So after my cups have been drying for about 4 hours, I took a chip brush and brushed off all the excess, and I did coat them with 2 coats of 2 times clear gloss from Rust-Oleum. Now there's a little disclaimer for right here. I was going to talk my way through this in real time on camera, but I chickened out and I took my respirator off because I didn't think you guys could hear me, and I didn't put it back on. So always wear your PPE when working with epoxy. So this is kind of a do as I say, not as I do situation, but this is typically how I apply my epoxy. I normally place about 15 milliliters of epoxy on the butt of the cup and just take my hand and wipe it down. And this, if you have any micro bubbles in your epoxy, this usually eliminates them for me. And I use much less epoxy doing it this way. And since I did 5 cups, I am still using the regular setting epoxy. This can be quite messy if you're not careful, so please be careful if you're applying it this way. If I find where I originally saw this, I will link it down below. So I've had a couple of customers ask me about the torching process. So I have slowed this down, and this is in real time, and this is just what I do. So while my cup is turning, I take my torch and I wave it real fast, going all the way from top to bottom to eliminate any bubbles that may be on the surface. I typically do this with 1 rotation of the cup. I have thin layers of epoxy on there, so any micro bubbles that may be there should be popped at this point. We are moving right along in this process, and I'm mixing up some more epoxy to apply another thin layer to each tumbler, and I'm using the rest of the epoxy to separate out into medicine cups for my mica powders and paints. I think I used about 5 to 10 milliliters of epoxy in each medicine cup, so I'm thrifty, or frugal as I like to call it. I'm going to take my medicine cups, break them in half, and then I'll just scoop out a little bit and apply it to each medicine cup. My husband says I'm cheap, but I like to use the word frugal, if you will. With these mica powders, a little bit goes a long way, so I'm just taking a very small amount on the tip of my popsicle stick, just adding it to my epoxy and giving it a good mix, and now we are ready for the Milky Way process. I already have a very thin amount of epoxy already on the cup. I have let it turn for a little bit, and I have torched it because I do not want to add too much heat at the end. So I'm just taking this popsicle stick and just applying it in streaks and lines all over the cup. Once I get enough on there, you'll see me take my finger, and I am just basically finger painting the paint, making some swirls. I'm removing the excess because sometimes it will kind of glob up on you. So I'm just taking my finger and moving the mica powders around. Once I'm satisfied with how it's looking, I will let it sit there and spin for a little bit just to see if it's going to kind of fan out. Sometimes I will go back in and add a little bit more, and I like to do my Milky Ways in layers, so this will not be the only layer of mica powders and paints that I add to each cup. I just think it gives it a little bit more dimension and character. I think it's character is the word that I'm supposed to use right there. I'm not real sure, but it just makes it real pretty. At this stage, sometimes I will go in and add some chunky glitter throughout just to give it a little bit more dimension and sparkle. I do not normally like to use heat in this process, but I did have some bubbles to pop up with, I guess, manipulating this mica powder all over this tumbler. So I did torch it just a tad, and I'm going to let it turn to see exactly what we end up with. And basically it's the same thing for this green cup. I will not put all 5 cups on here, but I do all of them the exact same way. I just added micas. Once I added enough, I take my finger and just finger paint it, take off all the excess, and we will let this turn, and I will go back in with another layer of micas on this one as well. My advice to new tumbler makers: when in doubt, if your customer is indecisive and only gives you colors to go by, Milky Way it. You cannot go wrong with a good Milky Way. While my cups were turning, I went ahead and cut each niece's name onto the vinyl using my Silhouette Cameo 4. The 2 types of vinyl that I used on these tumblers were from Teckwrap Craft and Oracal 651. Teckwrap Craft, I just weeded that for Miss Bailey, and also Elena. It just weeds perfectly. It cuts perfectly. As long as your settings are correct on your cutting machine, this vinyl is a dream to work with. The neon yellow vinyl is from Oracal 651, and again, it is just probably the best 2 brands of vinyl that I have ever worked with. I sell both of these in my store, and I only sell products that I use and that I love. If I don't love it, I do not sell it. Now, I have been selling vinyl in our store for almost 4 years, and Teckwrap Craft always comes with a protective thin clear sheet over it, and that just keeps it from getting scratched or damaged. But most of the lines that they carry always have this thin clear protective sheet. So I ended up having to cut Kylie's decal over because I, seller of Teckwrap, forgot to remove it. I could have possibly saved it, but it just got away from me, so I ended up having to recut hers again. Right here is when I realized, crap, I'm gonna have to cut this again. I just removed that clear piece of protective sheeting. For the bottom layer of the offset, I did use Oracal 651. Here's a pro tip again. When you're weeding, if you're gonna weed an entire sheet of vinyl, weed fast, because I didn't. I got distracted and looked up and stopped weeding, and a piece of the sticky vinyl stuck to the name and it pulled it up as well. So if you're going to weed a full sheet of vinyl, weed fast or cut them out and weed them separately. Let me say that this has nothing to do with the vinyl. The vinyl was perfect. It was the operator, i.e. Lindsay. Now that we have everything weeded, I am going to do a test run with this Teckwrap Craft and this parchment paper. I thought I was ordering a roll of parchment paper, but they sent butcher paper instead, and butcher paper does not like my transfer sheets. So I'm just testing that out on this parchment paper just to make sure that we don't have any issues when I line up these decals. I use parchment paper as kind of a guide because you can see through it. I'm able to line it up perfectly. So now we're going to get started with my niece Bailey's cup. Shout out to Bailey, aka Granny. She calls me Granny because she says I'm old, but I know I'm her favorite auntie. I'm just taking my transfer paper and I'm laying it down. You will see why here in just a second, what I mean when I say my transfer paper does not like butcher paper. So once I have my decal with my transfer all ready to go, I take the parchment paper and I take my offset and I basically do a hinge method. So I take the one piece of the decal, line it up to make sure it's perfect. And you might not be able to see it in this video, but I can see straight through this parchment paper. Once I know that my decal lines up perfectly, I just take it and remove the parchment paper and lay it down, and it is ready to apply to the cup. And here we are. My transfer is stuck to that butcher paper, and I was a little bit upset about that because I use this particular transfer paper on just about everything, and I can use it multiple times because it does have a great adhesion to it. In the end, it was all able to work out, and I just laid this down and applied it to Bailey's cup. Now hopefully now that her cup is done, I will be the #1 auntie in her book, and she will maybe let me do some of the TikTok dances with her and my other nieces. And I pretty much do the exact same thing for each decal on the other 4 tumblers. With Elena's decal, however, this is the one that I was not paying attention to, and I ended up pulling it up a little bit. I thought I had straightened it out, but I guess I didn't, so I was going to just try to rogue, apply this offset, and I go back and forth. I was able to save it. I didn't have to cut it twice, but you got to pay attention to what you're doing when you're working with sticky vinyl, because mishaps can happen. You just have to know how to handle them, how to get through them, and how to make it work for you. I think I went back and forth on this one about 4 or 5 times, and I finally got it on there. It was off just a tad, but it's not really noticeable. If I don't point it out, then you won't really be able to tell. And this one is for my niece Kylie. This is my ballerina / buck or die dancing niece. Everything dance is Kylie. And this one is for Miss Aubrey. Aubrey is my warrior princess, and her favorite color is pink. She always tells me exactly what she wants on her tumbler, so this is Aubrey's cup. And Aubrey is really the reason each niece gets a cup. She tells me exactly what she wants and how she wants it, but then I feel bad because I did not make my other nieces a tumbler. So that is how each niece ends up with a cup, and here they are. Once we get our decals placed, I go back through and make sure there is no lifting or any bubbles, and then we move into the sealing process, and I use CC DIY's Quick Coat. This is a water-based sealer, and I just apply a very thin coat to each tumbler, making sure that my decals are flat. This just seals in that vinyl so that there is no lifting or pulling when the epoxy starts to heat up and cure. After each one of these are coated, I set them to the side and let them dry for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then we will be ready to move into the epoxy process. Now that my tumblers are dry, we are ready for epoxy, and this is the brand that I use. This is her Fast Set, and it is by far the most superior epoxy that I have ever used. Because I am still doing 5 tumblers at a time, I am only using the premium regular curing epoxy from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop. As far as epoxies are concerned, I just happen to love this product. I am not an affiliate, so I do not have a discount code for you for this particular epoxy. However, I just am a firm believer in promoting the products that I use and that I love, and this just happens to be one of them. There are a lot of great epoxy companies out there, and I will list some of my other favorites in the description box of this video down below. Once I have mixed up my epoxy and it is starting to be clear, I take a popsicle stick and I just scrape around the sides and the bottom. Most of the time with this much epoxy, I will take it and pour it into another clean cup, and I will scrape it out, because you will see that once you do that, you will still have some ribbons in there. So this just ensures that my epoxy is very well mixed. These tumblers took about 2 coats each to finish, and this is the final product. I really hope my nieces enjoy them. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like what you see, give us a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.